So my report is attached, and as I've been doing the last few months, I'm just giving you guys kind of an idea of what I'll be working on over the next month. My weekly reports to you guys. I know there haven't been this many this month as I've been gone, but you know they give you an idea of what I was working on for the over the last month, and this is what's looking forward. So as you can see under financial, Emily and I are continuing to work with CoBank and CFC on potential options for, the best financing options for our contract termination payment that we anticipate. And Emily and I are starting the budgeting process. She's starting by meeting with all of the managers independently, and then they will be meeting with me towards the end of August. So we are kind of in budgeting full swing, and I'll be helping with that once they get it to the point that they're ready to bring it to me, and then have it hopefully to you guys for review in October. That's the month that we're looking at doing the first review, and then the secondary review in November, at which point we would hope that you guys could make a decision for the 2024 budget. So you'll have 2 different months to look at it. In power supply, we are, still going back and forth on our power supply agreement, and we'll continue to work on that. That is going to be taking up still the majority of my time over the month of August. Operationally, we are meeting with, and you guys see this in the board packet, we are still working on a solution for our fiber, what we're going to do with our fiber middle mile, how we might potentially, provide value to the community by using that asset. We have proposals that we'll be looking at later in the meeting from 2 different providers, Connection and Visionary, as far as their interest is concerned in our middle mile fiber. Employee focus, we're wrapping up the compensation study, so I'll be working with Angie on that. Angie and I have worked together with the consultant that we're using on compensation, and we will continue to work through that over the month of August so that we can implement, look at what those changes, anticipated changes need to be so that we can get them into the 2024 budget. And I'm also meeting over the month of August with each individual department to discuss in detail the full strategy plan. So, we had that strategy work group that was made up of several employees, but it wasn't the entire employee group. So we will be going around to each department. I will be talking to them about the strategy, letting them know their role in that and kind of just next steps on the strategic plan. I'm also hoping that those smaller group meetings will just be a good time for me to get to hear a little bit one-on-one from the different departments, how they're doing, how I'm doing for them, and hopefully get some feedback. And then a community focus for the month of August, I will be attending High Note Thursday, Winter Park. Mountain Parks will have a booth set up there, and I will be attending that. And then I've also been scheduling, Tiffany's helping me get scheduled, a bunch of meet and greets throughout all the communities with like our town managers and our mayors and the councils and things like that. So I had my first one this week already with the town of Granby, and I will have those scheduled throughout the month of August just so I can get to know some of those leaders in our communities. And board focus, it's also the month that I will be doing a lot of the quarterly one-on-one visits with you guys. So I've got 2 of those down and a couple more on the schedule. I think I've got both Cray and Mike scheduled for next week, I believe. And so the rest of you guys, if you have time and you can schedule with me, just let me know one-on-ones. I'll come out, meet with you in your service territory. I know Ty's really busy right now this time of year, so that one might be, I have to put that one off a little bit, but definitely Ryan, you and I can get together on schedules and find the time for me to come meet individually with you. And that's kind of gives you an overview of what I'll be doing over the next month. Any questions? Any concerns with the way we're reporting? Do you guys like the forward looking with the backward looking being on a weekly basis? Are you comfortable with that? Okay.
Good job. Thank you.
Great.
Glad you got a break.
Yes, it was thank you guys for allowing me to take vacation. It was nice. My family enjoyed it, and we had a wonderful time. So but we were ready to come back and get right back into the swing of things here.
Thank you, Virginia. On to discussion items. Business.
So the first item under there, Liz, do you want me to take that one?
Yeah, why don't you go ahead and take that one?
Okay, so you all know Aaron Street, our new communications manager. One of the things that he did at his last job for the city of Hot Springs is they had a monthly bulletin that came out after their board meetings, just that they could share with the community and with the staff to let them know what was going on, keep them more informed about board meetings. Even though our board meetings are open to the public, I think it's just another layer of transparency and accessibility for our membership into the co-op. So this is one that Aaron designed and put together as a draft after the July. We started using it. We wanted the board to consider it. Levi has brought up some points that I think the board needs to consider with regards to having kind of a board meeting bulletin. But I wanted you guys to take a look at it. Any questions you have about it, you can ask Aaron. And then any, points that Levi wants to bring up about, some considerations that you guys might want to think about before deciding whether or not you want to implement this.
So how, is this going to be on the website?
Put it on the website. We can, when I was at the city, we would send it to local media
Oh, okay.
and kind of get, we would do it the night of, we would have board meetings every other week. So I don't think y'all want to go to that far, but monthly's good. But we would send it to the media and kind of give them the information in a format that was fitting and had all the information there for them. We would put it on our social media outlets so that the community would know. Because we put, we put on the website the agenda items and what we're going to be talking about and voting on. But afterwards, it'd be nice to follow up maybe with them and let them know what happened. Just having a thought.
And the other audience too would be the employees. Because we have an agenda, we have what happens at the agenda. They can go watch the video if they want to stream, put it on fast speed and try to listen. But people have things they want to do with their lives, so it would clue them into what happened at the board meeting rather than waiting for the minutes to be voted on the following meeting. Now, of course, that creates some nervousness for our attorney.
Just because it creates one more document that has to be reconciled with what is the official record of the meeting.
Which is the minutes.
Which is the minutes, which is the thing that is approved by the board.
Yeah.
This won't be approved by the board, but it is a document with one person's opinion as to what happened at the meeting. So I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm just saying that's the other consideration, is that it's just one more document that potentially could be different from what the board minutes end up saying.
I have a thought
Go ahead.
to expand on Levi's concern, which totally makes sense, is we're not doing the magazine. And we're going to kind of transition to our own newsletter. And maybe the newsletter could kind of have a little subset
Board
of
section.
board things. And maybe it's delayed enough that we've had time to do our approval of our minutes. And maybe the segue is, we don't have this specifically, but we integrate this information into our new newsletter that's going to replace the CREA.
And then the board approves it before it goes in the newsletter? Or
Well, we're not going to approve the newsletter per se, but
maybe what
this
goes in
a
it?
little section would be thrown out after we've approved the minutes. So it's a month old.
Yeah.
So-
That's the only thing.
I guess my question is, to me, it comes down to trying to weigh the benefit of fairly timely communication with our member versus the risk that we get something a little bit wrong in there. Or the risk that something that is in there could be misinterpreted. And I'm curious where people come down on that. I also wonder if there's a way, that risk could be mitigated somehow so that it's, or that could be acceptable enough to the board. I think it's hard to, as a board member, we get asked about characterizing what went on at the board. What do we say? We can't, if you really want to watch the video, you could. My understanding of what we voted on was this, but the official minutes will be out 5 weeks from now. It's not like, it's hard for business to communicate with your members in that timescale. I
And with
think.
the employees, which is a
And with
point
the
you brought up. I mean,
employees.
to me, this is something we would send out to the employees before it goes to the community, then the employees know what action was taken. You know, I think that there is, Levi's right, and that there could be something where we state it this way in here, and in the actual minutes, it gets stated a little bit differently. But as far as I'm not gonna say the word right, but you guys know what I'm trying to say, it's gonna tie my tongue. But it's not gonna be that different. So, I mean, there is a risk, but Liz is right, it's a balance of risk versus reward. The transparency associated with it, the, you know, really good, open, honest, timely communications with both your employees and your membership. I think it's just more accessible to your membership. There's a lot of benefits. There is a risk. The risk is we could have a deviation between what we say in here and what's recorded in the official approved minutes of the board.
But, and to Liz's point, of, I think it was you that, about mitigating it. So I did review this and made suggested revisions that Aaron and Virginia agreed with, including making it Virginia's.
My report. It's not from the board.
Oh, there you go. That makes sense. So,
This is not a board document.
Right.
Okay.
It's Virginia's report of what happened.
So have you guys had a chance to look at this one from the July meeting and read through it and feel like it's, you know, worth. Ryan's like, when would I have done that?
I just wanted to ask a
Yeah.
process question,
Yes.
and you probably already addressed this before, but is there any mechanism by which we could approve minutes before the next board meeting to where it's fresher in people's mind?
Exactly, that was something we are gonna talk.
Actually approve them? I mean, to approve anything,
Would
it
have
has
to
to move, it has to
be in
in a
session
meeting.
and-
Yeah.
But
I can try to work getting the minutes out earlier.
I think that
I think Virginia has an idea for a different process for minutes altogether, which will help in that.
But it's still, it's unlikely that we would actually have the board approve them any earlier than
No.
the next board meeting.
That's right.
You would have to have a different board meeting to do that. But what I would say about this is these things that you guys approve, right? If you approve a rate change, or if you approve us to give a donation away, we don't wait a full month until
Right.
after you've approved the minutes for us to
Actually
actually act
happen,
on
yeah.
that stuff. So those things happen after you approve them. We are taking action based on your direction and based on your votes. So a lot of times we would be notifying members about these decisions anyway through a press release or through our actual actions.
and our customer service reps or people in the field
Yeah.
are gonna get questions. And if they have to wait until,
And we don't say, oh, well, next month we'll have the minutes from the board meeting and then we can tell you the answer to that. I mean, that's just
Right.
not practical.
Because the minutes are just the record of what happened.
Exactly.
It happened.
It happened. That decision has been made.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, at the city, we would create this document, make a PDF, put that on the website, and this is something we might talk about a little bit later in the meeting, about PDFs and on the website. But like Virginia said, this is also important to let our employees know what happened at the meeting. And so we would send out a link to the PDF to employees and to the community. There was another publication that we did, like a weekly newsletter, and we would send that to the board and the city management first. And then we would wait at least a day. And then if someone saw something that they thought was wrong or we could be clearer about, they would call me or email me and we could update the PDF. And nobody would know any different. It was online. We could update it. So this document could be sent to you guys, employees. And if someone said, well, maybe we should take that paragraph out, we could just go online, change the PDF, and the public wouldn't know that had happened. They haven't had the link to it yet. So that could be an option.
I mean, is this something we plan Levi to review every month?
I would not, but
Okay.
if we feel like he needs to, I mean, I'm not used to having the legal counsel approve communication messages
Okay.
unless it's around something very strategic, like maybe power supply issues
Yeah.
or something like that. Other than that, I'm not used to. Now, maybe Mountain Parks has done that in the past, but typically I'm not used to seeing it. The attorney review communication.
And usually when I was writing the board reports for the city, that's what we called it, I would pre-draft it based on everything that's been uploaded for the upcoming board meeting. So the department would say, we want to propose this, and they had all the information. So it was not like I was taking information from the meeting and adding my opinion to it. It was all just facts. It came from the board documents. And then when the board approved it, then I would go ahead and put that story in the document.
How are people feeling about the board bulletin?
I like it.
Yeah, it's fun.
I think the discussion has kind of cured me of the concerns
Mark?
on council.
Brian?
I like it. The other, if I could bring up one other,
Yes.
just having been through and trying to watch YouTube videos, if we could bookmark various points in the agenda.
Right.
It would, I mean, just
Right.
to help people not spend 4 hours, right?
Right.
If they want to go to a specific topic, I really recommend that in
Yeah.
conjunction with something like this.
Just starting to work on that.
Okay.
I can call it. I don't know if you had-
Justin?
I mean, I still like it. I was for it originally.
Yep.
When we started looking at it. And I think the disclosure at the bottom is adequate, that it's a summary. Yeah.
Great. Thank you, guys. We'll move forward with it and we'll do it for this board meeting. And I do like the concept of, Aaron sending it to me and you first. So maybe like immediately following the board meeting, like the next day or Monday, you'll see it. Get back with me really quickly if you see anything that you think is misstated before we send it out to the employees and then the community. So we'll give a little bit of time break there in case you guys catch anything.
I had just a little question on nitpicky wordsmithing. Just in terms of how a lot of our members don't understand capital credits and this and that paragraph at the bottom right, 3 annual reviews of donation requests for unclaimed capital credits funds. Member calls us, oh, yeah, I haven't claimed mine yet, I'd like those. And that if there's always kind of a misunderstanding about that, and I wonder.
So we just call our
Of
education
donation
fund or something.
requests,
Well,
period.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I hear that. I think we should leave it to the communications department to make sure that we are correctly communicating throughout the year what unclaimed capital credits are, what that fund is. And we have been putting out messages about that and about that new fund. And certainly if we get those questions and they call in, we can answer them and we can deal with them. But I don't want to change what we're calling it here because the actual name of the fund is the unclaimed capital credits fund. So,
Okay.
but we'll try to make a point to communicate about that throughout the year so that people do understand it as best as they can.
Would this one be published or?
Nope, this is just an example. We'll go to the next. Great, thank you, guys.
Okay. Fiber strategy.
Okay. So fiber strategy is going to be a big one, guys. We've got a lot to look at here. In your board attachment, you'll see two proposals. So over the past few weeks, we've received 2 different proposals. One from Connexon and one from Visionary. And they are both essentially partnership proposals. For those of you who are new to the board, we, Mountain Parks, own and have built over the last few years a middle mile fiber system of fiber rings that connects, essentially our substations and our offices to fiber. Those fiber rings were built such that they would handle not only our internal needs for fiber and communications between our substations and our offices, but also extra fiber was built there for potential future use throughout the community, whether that was a, last mile fiber play or something else. So that's what this board did several years ago, and that project is getting finished up. As we finish up building that middle mile, we have had interest from, here we see Connexon and Visionary, about how to partner with us for the use of those extra fibers, right? That fiber that could be used for other purposes. So you can look through the 2 proposals. I hope you guys have had time to. If not, we can really go through them all both in detail. But essentially what they're both proposing is that they would build a last mile solution. So last mile is the fiber that's beyond the middle mile, goes all the way out to the homes and businesses throughout the service territory. So that's last mile. We do not, Mountain Parks does not have a last mile build plan in mind. So both of these entities have proposed building that last mile to become the ISP, internet service provider, the end provider of internet service to homes and businesses throughout our service territory. The 2 proposals are, really similar in that they are looking to serve our entire service territory. You'll see in Visionaries, it doesn't exactly show the whole service territory. I think it shows around 90%, but at subsequent conversations and emails that I have had with actually Brian, who's here today, say that they are actually looking to build 100% to 100% of our meters. So that it's a slight revision to what you see in the proposal. But they both are proposing that they build out the system and that they would be getting an IRU. The reason it matters to us is that as they build that out, they own it, they operate it, those are their customers, but they would be using that middle mile fiber that we own, that we have built. And so to use that, what you typically see is an entity like a Connexon or like a Visionary would basically get a contract for the use. It's called an IRU for the use of all of those excess fibers that we have on our middle mile. There are concepts around an open access where we would allow lots of different providers to get in there and use it. Or you can have an exclusivity agreement where all of those fibers are IRU to an individual company. Joe can correct me if I'm wrong, but right now the capacity of our middle mile as it's built to really do a full 100% covering all members fiber play, you would really need to IRU as an end use, as a provider, the third party provider, they would really need an IRU for all of those fibers that we've built. So it's not that we have to choose between the two, but likely our system is built to where we really need one partner.
I mean, if you didn't just pick one, would two companies be putting fiber to every home? How would that work?
You'd be overbuilding
or no companies because they don't have the critical mass.
They don't have, or they don't have enough middle mile fiber to suit all their needs, right? There's lots of different ones. RDOF and there's BEAD, and there's many different funding opportunities that are readily available right now. And that's why both of these entities are looking to make proposals to us right now, is because they're trying to get funding, right? And you'll see that throughout their proposals. They outline the different funding opportunities they have. Some of those funding opportunities come available in September. So they're really wanting to have a partnership because that lends strength to their applications. And it also lets them know, whether or not this is a good service territory for them to move into for their business cases. And so that's what we're looking at. We're looking at two proposals, and then we can look through those in detail. And also on the individual or the big packet that I gave you after you get done with their proposals, we kind of go over some of the potential, things for you guys to consider when looking at these proposals and deciding what we want to do with that middle mile asset that we own. So I think that I kind of already went over those, but just think about what we want to do with that last mile, how we want our members to be served. And one thing that will be really critical to us as a staff as we review these proposals and make a recommendation to the board as far as which proposal we think would be the best partnership, we need to know what's most important to you. Is it percentage of service territory covered? Is it the technology that they're covering it with, like fiber versus wireless versus, other types of technology? Is it the speed at which they build it? Is it any funding expectations on Mountain Park's part? Is it the amount of money we make off of our fiber lease agreement for that middle mile? I'd like to know some of your priorities as a board and some direction there so that when I'm reviewing these proposals, I'll know which one is actually better suited for, the overall direction that the board is given.
I mean, it'd be good to kind of have.
Real quick, I think that part of the discussion could be and maybe should be an executive session.
That's fair. I mean, because it is a competitive business. We've got two different organizations who have presented proposals. So you might want to have some of that in executive session, but it's up to you guys.
Is it appropriate, Brian, to have Wayne talk a little bit about this?
Well, I think if the board would like to hear, we could also invite to the September meeting both companies when you guys have really dug in and we've talked about what's important. That's what I guess I would think we should have maybe an apples to apples.
Yeah.
Folks here.
What was the outreach to gather interest?
And we did not do an RFP. This is not the result of an RFP. This is the result of them coming to us. So, and you will recall that last month we had another Vistabeam, is that right?
Yeah.
Another or another internet service provider came to the board meeting, Vistabeam. Joe did reach out to them because we had received these proposals to let them know we had received some other proposals and if he wanted to submit one. I don't believe he did this time.
No, they're at a conference this week, said they would reach out next week.
And we had one prior general manager, we had discussions with one other large fiber to the premise provider.
And that the RFP is something we could do, right? If the direction from the board is we really want to put out an RFP, we want to see all the proposals we get and then take into consideration, choose a partner, we absolutely can do that. It's the only reason I'm bringing this to the board right now is because they are reaching out to us saying we need a partnership because the timing of the funding is critical to these providers.
And that funding too, to me, from all the time that Justin and I and Mark have been on the board, this fiber to the premise or even wireless to far reach is extraordinarily expensive.
Yeah.
And it may not happen unless they get that funding. And so if we push this out and they miss that funding, then, we wait another, I don't know how long till that funding comes back.
We may have lost an opportunity for our community, essentially. And so I want to be cognizant of that, and I want the board to be aware of that. The funding is critical for these providers. And, I certainly don't want our delay to cause them to miss those opportunities for our community.
General guidelines on what those timeframes are related to the funding.
Yeah, and I have been out of that industry for a little while, but I know that there is one round. Joe, do you know? Joe, I heard it.
CPF, Capital Projects Fund is, applications are due by September 22nd.
Second.
BEAD hasn't been quite nailed down yet, but they're talking about second quarter of.
And BEAD is the larger pot of
BEAD is
funding.
$860 million. Capital projects is. Oh, it's 160.
So like you said, that may trump just normal RFP.
Yes, I mean, my absolute preference, I think, as you guys who've worked with me for a few months now know, is always to do an RFP. I think that that's the best practice. I think we never know who might be out there who would be a good partner on any project that we're doing. I don't like moving forward with things like this without an RFP. Sometimes the situation is such that you have to, but I don't know that I would say my recommendation is to not do an RFP. I still prefer an RFP process, but it could result in, the loss of some funding opportunities for our potential partners.
Would your gut feeling be that any partner that came in have to have funding help
Yes,
to make it affordable and
Yes.
reasonable and get the coverage we want?
yes.
Well, I guess I would recommend you stay the course then and go with an RFP and go down that path.
What, could you say that again?
I would recommend that Virginia stays the course and get an RFP and go down that path. I guess I've heard every politician in the state of Colorado tell us time and time again, we're all going to have
Gonna have it.
internet service or
Right.
this home in rural Colorado. So I don't think it's going to go away anytime soon,
The funding.
the funding.
How is the funding? Is it per region or is it per,
It's all different. So every funding opportunity is a little
a
bit
little bit different?
Yes, so it's really hard to just generalize and say this is the way it's set up.
Yeah.
Because you've got state funds, you've got federal funds, they all have different requirements. They're all set up in different ways.
A little bit different.
In general, it's based on lack of service
Yeah.
or poor service. So they'll
We
say
fit
served or
those.
underserved. We're in a good area for some funding opportunities.
Yeah.
Yes. But they're all
But
different.
how does that affect like Xfinity where they charge, I mean, if you call them up and you want service to your house, they say it's $50,000 to put a line to your house or whatever.
So this would be,
Are they also taking advantage of some of this?
Most internet
well,
providers are.
CenturyLink certainly did.
Yeah, CenturyLink received a lot of the past funds.
Yeah.
Yes.
And they haven't
Didn't
backed them up, so
service.
they used that money to build out like Winter Park.
Yeah.
Because they were supposed to be building it.
The rural
They-
areas.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
they have one in like.
Yeah.
Somewhere in
Yeah, so I mean,
No, it's checked that money.
And that particular issue is something that I've made abundantly clear to both Visionary and Connexon as my primary concern is partnering with somebody who says they're going to cover us, they get a bunch of money and then they don't.
Yeah.
I've seen internet companies do that we've seen it in our nation for decades, right? That is a thing that happens. And so they are both aware that that's a concern for me, especially in doing an exclusive IRU for our middle mile fiber.
Yeah.
Then if we don't see the results and they aren't actually serving everyone, what is our recourse?
Right.
So that's something that I would definitely want to build into that conversation. But again, I think this topic goes back to kind of our strategy around what we want to prioritize, what the board wants to prioritize in choosing a partner. And if we are going to do an RFP, or even if we're not, I think it would be good for us I need that direction from you guys as to what's more important. Is it that we get the farthest reaches? Is it that we get it built in 2 years instead of 10 years? And I think that could be held,
is it that we don't have any partners and we just let them come use little bits?
Right.
Yeah.
Open access.
Open access. So we're not really, we're requiring everybody to pay the same to use.
Yeah, that's what's
leads
interesting
versus-
is like, because I could see if I was a company and there's one guy at it 10 miles down the line, right? Is it really worth them to,
Every now.
yeah,
Well, yeah, and so in my opinion, once you do the open access, the profitable, high
Pieces
density,
are gonna
they're
get
all
taken.
get taken and then it's
Yeah.
not
No
gonna
one
happen
will get it at
in
that.
the
right.
rural areas. And so, yeah. And we're a rural, in my opinion, a rural area. You can't expect we're not a city where there can be 3 or 4 providers and everyone can survive. And that's, I guess the RFP thing, Ty, I hear you. I'm curious if we can get to a similar result if we identify what's important to the board and then try to drive the negotiations with the 2 we have.
Yeah.
Towards that versus trying to bring more people in. We've been talking to people for a long time and it's been, it hasn't, we don't have partners yet.
Okay.
And
This,
and it's certainly been put out there. I mean,
yeah,
companies are aware that we have this.
that's where I'm coming from. It's, your executive director prefers this path, so
Would you like to do an RFP on this?
Ideally, yes. But based on the timing of the funding, I think if I have strong enough direction from you guys, I can review these 2 proposals with that direction in mind and decide whether or not one of these meets your needs and your goals. So that's where I think, as Levi mentioned, maybe that's better in an executive session where you guys are actually, telling me what your strategy is, but behind how to use that asset that we have. So maybe we can talk about that there. And if I get strong, clear enough direction, I can let you guys know whether or not I think either of these proposals would meet that. And we can maybe discuss some of the potential benefits to making a decision now versus going through an RFP and vice versa.
I think one of my concerns is trying to serve the membership. If we wanted to go into that last mile ourselves, then we just get one of our Bridger and go hit the towns, and we would be able to be profitable. So I think it's important if we have a partner that they use that as well as the funding to serve the rural areas personally.
Right.
I mean, otherwise, you could use it probably pretty well.
Right.
And I mean, if you were in that business, if you just serve Delta and Montrose, probably do okay, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. If we chose to if we, Mountain Parks decided to build the last mile, we would need to build it to our dense population areas first for the first several years to make enough, to get a foothold enough and to have enough customers to then go out and build those last miles. That's what would happen.
And previously for you 3, the board has chosen not to be that last mile provider for a number of reasons. Does it?
$60 to $70 million.
Yes, it doesn't, yeah. I mean,
At one time, that's what our
Just based on what I know our plant is now, like our actual whole plant value, I would think it would be upwards of $100 million to build out the entire system for us. But there is grant funding, right? I mean, so I can't,
Yeah.
there's not grant opportunities. But I do think that I would prefer for the rest of it to be in executive session. Like Levi mentioned earlier, I think we start getting into that strategy, we might want to.
Okay.
Timeframe or anything like that, or that you'd like to hear?
I would,
Let's talk about the time frame in executive session. If that works for everyone. Because I think that's part of the.
It's part of the strategy.
Yeah, it's part of the strategy.
I will say in open session that I'm very excited that we have two proposals. I think they're both good proposals. And I hope one of these partnerships works. I think that they both would be advantageous to us and to our membership primarily.
Brian, thank you for attending today.
Brian, are you based locally then, or in?
Yeah, personally, I'm in Denver. We have offices in, right now we have offices in, Gunnison and
Can, not an executive, you won't be here. The timeliness of all this with your funding, what are we talking timeliness? 6 months, a year, 2 years? Why this funding's hot? We're all aware of those opportunities we're involved in. What kind of, how critical is your timing?
As Virginia mentioned, the timing from the money from the federal government is driving the bus. So all of us providers are basically hopping on that bus. And the first round, the $160 million in Colorado, is the applications, as Joe mentioned, are due September 22nd. So there's a fairly significant amount of money available to your service area. So having some guidance by the type of year we have to submit that application is critical for that $160 million. And then obviously the $860 million is
Don't have a date yet.
a very large pot.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, there could potentially be some more strings attached to that one that might draw that out. So capitalizing on the $160 million pot gets a good head start to what Virginia just mentioned, and is that can potentially fund some of the far outreaches at the same time as a partner would be building out dense areas. So you could compress that time frame that she had mentioned, that she referenced with DNBA, using the federal funds, if we can capitalize on that $160 million.
So this first round of funding, do you have to have a partner like us committed to get that funding, or how does that work?
Anyone can submit an application.
Okay,
Our major requirement is we have to have letter of support from the local government body.
Okay.
The group, so if we were to put an application in for Grand County, we have to get a letter of support from Grand County Commissioners.
so you can get the money, but you can get the money with, irregardless if you have a agreement with us.
It could make their application stronger if they did have a partnership.
Yeah,
And,
and if you didn't have a partnership with us, what do you use that funds for?
I guess I would just say anyone that attempts to significantly build out your service area without your partnership is likely to not succeed.
Okay,
I mean, they would, any provider could overbuild the middle mile and build their own middle mile
Yeah.
on top of our middle mile. So,
Right.
I mean, us not partnering with them does not keep them from doing it. It just will be cost prohibitive if they don't have access to our middle mile.
okay.
And it's redundant, the redundancy is not something that the state of Colorado.
But I mean, are
wants.
they even looking at that, right, when they're
Yes.
handing that funding out?
Yes.
Yes.
They
Yes.
are.
They don't like to see redundancy. They like to see, I shouldn't say redundancy. They don't like to see overbuilding.
Yeah.
So overbuilding of infrastructure is never a good thing. They would rather see full use of existing infrastructure rather than.
Yeah, but I mean, so say we partner with somebody and they go for this funding, that doesn't preclude Xfinity or
Nope.
Comcast or
Nope.
anybody else from getting the same
Nope.
funding, right?
Well, yeah, the same funding, yes.
Served or unserved. and that's-
Yeah, depending on which
there's eligible
source.
addresses and
Yeah.
homes along the path.
Yeah,
If it's served, then it's not listed as an eligible.
but I mean, there's like, say on my street, there's 10 of the 50 houses are served by Xfinity, the other ones, because Xfinity just charges you per house, right? Hey, you want it? We're gonna, I don't know how they, yeah, I'm just
But
curious.
they're not gonna, the state isn't gonna give, my understanding of it is, they are not gonna give grants to two different entities to do the same
Same.
work,
Right.
In the
to
same
provide the
same
same
location.
They
location.
could fund two different entities in the same,
In our service territory,
Yeah.
yes. They could say, okay, we're gonna award to MCA for, Walden, and
Yeah.
we're gonna provide funding to entity B for the Granby area, and
Yeah.
entity C for the Fraser area.
So if we sign an agreement with one of these for all our area, but someone else gets funding for part of our, how does that all work?
I mean, just because somebody gets funding doesn't mean that the other person can't build there.
Yeah,
So that's.
okay,
Like Comcast and CenturyLink have fiber ring.
Yeah.
They're from Fraser to Granby.
Yeah, so us partnering with somebody certainly does not exclude competition.
Right.
In no way does it do that, or prevent others from getting funding from other sources.
to do it however they want to do it.
I guess my question is, how long have you known this money is available?
It was announced back, it was part of the big infrastructure act in Congress, so it was in 2021. They just came out with the parameters of the money about 6 months ago. And so basically, this first round of money, we've had about, since they finalized the data, we've had about 4 or 5 months.
Okay. I guess if we have to make a decision by September 21st, I personally, I don't like being rushed on some of these things, so
100% agree with you.
I'm curious about that.
But I mean, they can submit their proposal for funding whether or not we've figured out what we're doing yet, right?
I think it'd be prudent to try to have something brought into court.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For Virginia to present us.
Yeah, I think that'd be huge. But we can talk more about that timing in executive session, and really hash that out. Anything else on fiber? Okay. I try to, in one of our goals is improving board performance, and I tried to put together sort of at first it was thinking about when I came on the board, what it was like to be a new director and sort of the things that I learned from other directors, things that I learned from staff, whatnot. And then as I was going through policies, I thought about creating a director checklist so that we all sort of have a roadmap as to what we need to do as directors, and then also a common understanding of how the board operates. I recognized when I asked Mike to be the preschool committee chair, and you said, do we even do that? That we're not all on the same page when that was a real shock to you that we had committees or that there could be committees. And so having sort of a baseline understanding of the charter of the things we do as a board will help us be a better board, I think. And to Ryan's point about the minutes, one of the things that I think is important for board performance is to see those minutes more quickly. And the other thing I think, which I put on the bottom of this checklist, is providing feedback at the end of almost every meeting, maybe, about the process that we use. How is the process working? Are we having good discussions? What do we need to do differently to perform better? So I throw this checklist out as a draft, and I'd love your feedback on it. And then in September, maybe we have a final version of it. And if you're a new director and you're going through it and you have questions about any of the things listed, how to access them, feel free to reach out to me, to fellow directors, to staff, and get your questions answered. Any comments on it?
I was quickly scrolling through. I know one of the learnings I know I have is accessing FERC proceedings and really being able to sift through the menagerie of
Right.
documents.
Right.
The limited times I've done it. So I don't know if there's any help or guidance that fellow board members have on doing that, or if there's a process already in place to help us navigate.
Well, yeah, you and I might be the only board directors who are, the only directors who are very interested in reading the FERC
Yeah,
proceedings.
Liz is gonna be your expert.
Most of the other ones aren't all that interested, but we can go through. I'm not an expert, but I do know how to sign up for the docket notifications and go through and get them. And I'd probably spend more time than I should be out skiing, really. You know, I mean, they're long and they're confusing, and even if I read them, I'm not a FERC attorney. I don't necessarily know what they mean. And the process is bureaucratic and long.
Well, and because of the complications of all the FERC, of the various dockets that we are involved in or have interest in, and you know, how lengthy they can be and complicated it can be, we do have FERC attorneys that give us a weekly update on any proceedings that we are involved in or have interest in. And that is, you know, sort of, Liz and I get that every week. It helps a lot. They go through the massive work of reading all of those filings and then pulling out the pieces that pertain to us. So that's something that I don't see any reason why that couldn't be shared with any director. So if you have interest in that, we're happy to share that with you on a weekly basis. And it certainly gives you a really good synopsis of what's going on that has impact on us.
Or something like that is just posted to a repository. That we can
I don't know why we couldn't. I
But we
mean,
should think about
we
it.
could think about, okay.
Yeah, it's, yeah, because it's, we have to think about.
Yeah, there are aspects that are
Some of it is
privileged.
But I will say now that we have that, you know, we have people who understand FERC process and understand the language and understand our interests. And they're giving us that synopsis, which is very helpful.
It's just real quick, any communications that you get from me or any other attorney,
Yep, our privilege.
attorney-client privileged, that only the board acting collectively can waive. So you don't want to share any of that outside of the other board members.
But yeah, okay. Anything, any other comments on the checklist? And I would ask you if you, within the next 2 weeks, I know there's fishing trips and a lot of hay and whatnot. If you, Craig, you're gonna get a frown. If you have suggestions or comments, please email them to me or call if that's your preferred method of communication. And I'll make a note of it.
I think it's a good idea. I feel like I kind of got left in the dust. As Tom was leaving, I said, a lot of this stuff, there wasn't really any, like, going, all of a sudden, I've been on 5 years, I go, hell, I didn't. So I think it's a great, especially with a new board membership, a young board. It just leaves all the stones flipped over for some reason. I like it.
It's a good document.
Like the one thing I don't know is like how to set up this training. I mean, that would be.
Yeah. So we can talk
Yeah.
about that's
Like the instructions on-
classes.
yeah.
How do I get my credentialed cooperative director?
Right.
Thing? You don't know. And yeah, there are 3 different, that's exactly where I was.
Yeah.
When I sat as a director.
But we had somebody
Casey maybe walked us
Casey walked
through.
us through. She, I mean, sat down and even.
Just like it's just like a little sheet that had instructions. Yeah.
This would be a good path. So I think that.
We can figure that out.
And I think we'll have a lot of assistance once we have our new executive assistant / records manager
Okay.
that we are currently interviewing for. That person will have a much more active role in helping you guys know what these training opportunities are, know when they are, tracking you down, letting you know, hey, you can sign up for this one, or I can sign you up for that one.
Yeah.
I'm used to having that type of person do that for you guys, and we'll get there. We've got some good candidates, so I'm optimistic that you'll have that assistance that you need.
I remember getting a ton of emails from NRECA about the classes.
Yeah.
Dates and calendars. So it's some.
But you have to get-
Matter of opening that email.
You have to get signed up to get those emails.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any other comments on that? Okay, trade organization review.
So per you guys' request, sometimes this document works for me, sometimes it isn't scrolling for you guys.
I updated.
It was scrolling for me before, and now it's not.
Would
So
you like mine to scroll?
not scrolling at all.
There you go.
Mine scroll.
Okay. See, I just reset mine. We'll see if it comes up.
Thanks for, I think it looks like a lot of work.
It's going.
So thanks.
Yeah, and I
This-
appreciate the
It's going.
staff's comments.
Yeah, so the three primary trade organizations that we reviewed are NRECA, so that's our national trade organization, CREA, which is our statewide trade organization, and then Western United. Western United is the it's like a vendor, but we're also a member of it. So it's still it's like a trade organization. We have a board member who sits on that, so I think it's important that we include them. They provide the majority of our materials. So they are a vendor who provides the majority of the materials that we use here at the co-op. The way that I went through this review is I reached out to each of those organizations. I asked them to provide, from their perspective, all the different services that they provide us, the different value proposition that they want to put forward for you guys to consider, and then also the total cost of our participation in those organizations. So the first thing you'll see is a staff review of those trade organizations, our internal perspective of what pieces we're using, the value that they're providing, and the costs and everything. And then after our staff review, you will see the information that they provided. So CREA's is the first one. You'll see the membership review that their CEO provided to us. And then also they've got a kind of a 2-page, their really well done, pretty value of the CREA. And then same thing for NRECA. At the end, you've got a multi-page value that NRECA offers us. So we can walk through this however you guys want. I don't know if you've all had time to review it. It's long, sorry, but there was a lot to talk about. So we can walk through it and really get into it. Or if you guys feel like you've read it all and kind of, just want to have discussion, I'm happy to do that as well.
How many of you feel like you've read it all and are ready to?
Read most of it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Question.
You didn't read it yet, Ryan?
Speed reading.
I misquoted, it's 140, not 100.
Yeah,
140,000, not 180.
Yes.
Right.
And
CREA dues.
CREA.
And notably, next year, we have already given notice that we will not be participating in CCL, which takes off the 34,000 there, so we'll be closer to around 100. However, they haven't released their 2024 rates. Their rates, change based on participation and their cost. So I don't know what those will be for 2024, but I assume they'll be somewhere close to that, $100,000 range. Any questions about the staff view of CREA? The services that they're providing that we're taking advantage of?
Safety and loss control, is that training for our crews?
Yes.
Is that
They come on site 5 weeks out of the year, and they send a safety person there for those days. They do training with our crews. They do visits, field visits with our crews. Right now, we do not have a safety director, so they're actually filling in for a whole lot of the mandatory safety requirements that we have on an annual basis. They also, within their safety program, provide RESAP, which is kind of our annual audit of our safety. It's not annual, I say that wrong. It's every other year of the various safety aspects of the co-op, and that's provided by CREA, and then also representatives for other co-ops come on site and do that review. So it's kind of how we compare ourselves to other co-ops and against the standard for safety. So the RESAP is a very valuable program that they offer us.
Folks that are not.
Excuse me, Justin, as the CREA board rep also, if you'd like for me to recuse myself, just out of discussion or to leave the room, I'm happy to do whatever the board would like.
We're not voting. Are we voting on this today?
Well, we would probably just keep doing what we've been doing from what I've read in here. So there's not really a decision.
I don't know that there'd be an action unless you guys think that there is, but you'd asked for a review, so this is our review of it. If from this review you think we should take action, maybe we can put something on next month's agenda
Right.
to vote on whether or not we should be a member of these organizations in 2024, if that's what we're thinking. But I don't think we have to vote on that today. I think now it's just informational.
Did anyone, we're having this review, in reading it, did any of you get the feeling that our present course with CREA, other than CCL, is something we should change?
I don't think there's anything urgent in there.
No.
No, it sounds like they're all useful.
So I don't think there needs to be a firm decision or a vote. Well, let's go on to NRECA.
I'm good with that.
And the value, I mean, is there some thoughts that are not in theory that, I mean, how do you do a reset and you basically pay an outside entity to look at those?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And
It
the
would be
things that
ways.
Adam mentioned, like the dielectric testing, and we'd have to then find an outside entity that would pay for all this.
Yes.
Okay.
I really like this,
Go ahead.
I just like this whole idea. It's like reviewing insurance here, going, are we getting value for our dollar? The guys, so these guys don't get too fat and sassy up at top, going, hey, are you serving the needs of your people? And I think it's just great to review it. Just if nothing else, to keep those guys honest and serving us is, we're their customers. If they're not serving us, if anything, it gives them notice going, hey, we don't think we're getting value for what we're paying. Or we're getting excellent value for what we're paying.
I do think it's prudent that for the sake of the membership pays for these things, just like they pay for anything else that we do. And I think it is wise to look at all these relationships on a regular basis to make sure that we still are seeing that value. So.
And I mean, hopefully, like Adam has the concern of we're getting less and less, so.
We're watching.
Let them know that through Virginia or through Trey, so that. We actually had a really good meeting with Jenna, who's in charge of the safety program. She came here and I was really happy to see her came here. And I voiced my concerns with that. Figure Justin was there also. And it's just back in the day, years ago, we used to get them on a monthly basis. Down to the five months a year, they show up 5 times a year. And then sometimes not a full week. So I think there's a lot of use there with CREA. I think they've got a lot of knowledge that they can help our co-op out with. So I would like to ask more from them and see more from them. I also think there's some good opportunity, whether it be more of a statewide apprentice program or more interaction between the co-ops. But I was really happy to see her show up. That meant a lot to me. That was last week.
Yes, it was. And one of the things that's important to remember, because, Adam did bring up it's less and less, like 5 times a year instead of 12. But that was a decision that CREA made with the entire board of CREA and input from managers and everything, where they were saying, we don't need you every month. We have our own safety program. We don't need as much support. So, sometimes when they make changes like that, it's because of the vote of the entire board saying, that's something we should cut back on because people are saying there's not value in every 12 months, even though Mountain Parks may be liked, every 12 months or, once a month. So I think that it's sometimes when we see something that we perceive as a, lessening of the services or a reduction of services available is because there was a strategic decision on CRA's part based on, people saying, oh, it's going to cost too much if we keep going with every month or, so I think that that's something to consider is why they made those changes.
And they had
Okay. Ty.
No, I just wanted to know what your gentleman's opinion was here, so.
And I guess that portion of our dues related function gets set based upon our size or something. And we couldn't say, we'd like to see you 12 months.
So that's been a conversation at CREA a lot this year with the managers group, and I'm sure probably with the board. There's a lot of co-ops who would like to have more pick and choose, like we want this level of service or that level of service. Right now, the way it's built, it is not that way. And I know it's broken down between general admin and safety and loss control, but we don't have a choice. It's not like we can say we don't want to participate in safety, but we still want to be members. The only one that you actually have a choice in right now to not participate in is the magazine, CCL. So the rest of it, yes, that our rate is based on our size, but no, we can't say we want fewer visits and save some money. Right now, that's not how CREA is structured.
And some of the co-ops that are members of that, they're not all tri-state members either. So you have Holy Cross and
Grand Valley.
Yep.
There's no trust.
Anything else on CREA? We're going to stick with CREA. Up, Angie.
Can I just mention quick, that one of the things that NRECA provides is reset. So,
Yes.
So if we're a member of NRECA, then that could also go with.
Well, that's great.
Yep. Good point, Angie.
NRECA.
So NRECA is the next one we have on here, and I combined that with Touchstone because they really are interlinked. I mean, they are separate memberships. You could do NRECA without Touchstone, but we do participate in both of them. One thing to note is that currently our Touchstone Energy annual dues are 50% of that is currently covered by Tri-State. Tri-State covers 50% of it for the members. So, when we exit Tri-State as part of the withdrawal notice that we've already given, we would have a higher percent. We'd be paying all of that 15,000 instead of half of it. But the value, you can read through the same things, the value that we get from NRECA, there's quite a few services that they provide, and as does Touchstone Energy. So, if you have any questions about any of those services or think that it's something that we need to reconsider, please let us know.
Does anyone think we should reconsider NRECA? All right, we'll put that in the budget for the 2020, once you get all the new numbers.
Once we know what the new ones are, right?
Right. Okay, Western United.
So Western United, there are not annual dues. We do have an obligation to purchase the vast majority of our materials from them. That's the contract that we have with them, that most co-ops across the state have with them. There are other providers, but right now we don't have any, there's no concerns with our relationship with Western United. They provide what we need in a timely manner. And we have not done a cost comparison. That's something that I did put in here. I think that it's always a good idea, just like we're reviewing these relationships. I think it's a good idea to do a cost comparison every, 3 to 5 years. That is something that I have worked through with Western United previously at a different co-op, and they were very, helpful through that process. And we found that they were the best deal. I can't guarantee that that's the case today, but I assume it is. It is something that I would recommend for 24 or 25 that we do a cost comparison just to make sure that we are still, working with the partner that offers the best value to our membership. But right now we don't have any concerns or complaints. They do a good job for us.
Western United does that themselves, just to stay competitive. Greg
Yes.
went through and said, hey, we need to know what our competitors are and stay for our members. So.
Our supply chain.
They did a great, yes, they were affected by supply chain issues like everyone else was, but something that, Greg, who's their CEO, brought up in his review is that during 2020 or during COVID and really when the supply chain crunch happened, they stopped sales to non-members. So they have non-member sales. They can sell to members and non-members their supplies. But during the supply chain issues, they stopped doing non-member sales and reserved all of their stocks specifically for members. I mean, that's an example of the way that they, they do put members first and address our material needs before addressing non-members, which is a great benefit. And so they were really good partners through that. At least in my experience, I was with another co-op during the majority of that. So Adam, I don't know, did you have any significant concerns with Western United?
No, I would just add that during our East Charles supplier up here, they basically put us priority on everything we needed, and it was here within days. It was amazing what they got us. They did a really good job through COVID, I think, communicating to us lead times on items. Yes, they had some stuff, and that's just nationwide. They went from extremely long lead times, but they really did try to communicate good with us and continue to communicate good with us because all of that's still in flux. And they look at the country if we really need something specific. So I feel like they're really good partner.
They're pretty lean. There's not a lot of employees in there. Now have offices in St. George, Utah.
They're mean and lean. Good price for them. It being the new rep for us.
Find that on margins.
That is always a topic of discussion at their board is whether they should lower prices and not have quite as much margin. That was Dick's, but it seems like they're still competitive with the prices they have and we get them.
Turn on our margins fast.
Good.
Super fast.
Yeah, they do. They pay margin back very quickly.
So I don't hear any changes in our relationship with Western United. Thank you very much for both you and the staff for weighing in on these organizations and doing this review. And how often do you think we should do reviews like this?
I would honestly recommend every 3 years.
Okay.
I think annually is probably a little bit much unless we have specific concerns. So if any of us as staff have a major concern with one of our, relationships like this, or if you guys as board do, then I think we should look into it. But if things are going well and we don't have concerns from our perspective or yours, I think 3 years is sufficient.
Okay, great. All right, let's take a brief break before we get into action items. Get up, run around, get especially sharp, and then we'll move into action items. Funny,
I forgot about
Is
it.
that Governor Vanderhoof's from Grand Junction ages ago that started?
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm sorry, we haven't participated for so long in it,
Well,
and so I
The
was.
reason I brought it up is because I've got
An
a thing from
invite.
them asking for our annual bill. And I was like, I don't know, did we participate? So yeah.
Maybe that's one.
What did they do?
An annual bill.
For our membership. And I was like.
Go out to lunch at Denny's.
Just pay.
No, but
You can't do much with, go too long with $600. I think they lobby. I think they're.
Oh,
I'm always missed.
That's why I put it on there, because like,
okay.
that's a board decision to be in that, because it's kind of,
Okay.
it's a
Can we,
political.
can we do it in, do you want to do it now? Well, that'd be an action item. Let's just leave it for right
We
now.
can leave that time to up until next month and.
Yeah.
I
That
would
one's
from the financial training with Eric gets us on about a 20-year cycle. So we're still operating sort of in the same way, but using that 5% helps me budget and plan better for what our cash requirements are going to be for capital credit. So, any questions on that?
Would you still strive to first in, first out approach, retire those later years, or would you need that in the
We
policy?
didn't really write it in policy. I think that's where it goes to board discretion, so that you guys have the authority to, and the flexibility to change that as you see fit. I think it's better to just kind of have that goal amount rather than a strategy.
Yeah.
So would that be like an annual maximum of 5%?
Yeah, so we would not retire more than 5% of the total patronage capital, but we would, we would try to, I think that's also like the target as well as the maximum, in my opinion, because that would keep you around the 20-year schedule.
To your question, the next section says we may retire capital in the following order. So it gives the board and the co-op flexibility to go into, to change the FIFO.
I would agree with that not having a minimum. If we're getting rid of the 25-year cycle, if we're not retiring 5% a year, we can quickly get it to 35 years.
But it's the same.
Same
so
language,
it's the same-
strive to.
Yeah, strive to.
Strive.
So the first one was strive to do it in 25, and this was strive to do the 5%, which is 20.
It's actually
a little
20, so it's a little
better.
faster than it
Okay.
was.
But
If you want me to
As long
take
as
that
that's-
maximum amount and we just say we're striving for 5%, I can make that change so that it's not, it doesn't seem like I think to your point, Justin, you're trying to say if we retire much lower than that 5%, then yes, we will get
stretches it out.
out of sync with a reasonable retirement structure. So that would be something we would be keeping our eyes on, right? If you guys did have a year where we were really cash short and you were like, we can only do 1% this year or none, I mean, that's not unusual. I think we need to keep it open to have,
I
that
agree.
ability. But yeah, and then if we started to notice that doing it at 5% really puts us on like a 30-year retirement cycle, catch up. How are we gonna catch up? So.
I think it's been coming through.
And then the last thing, sorry, it's down on page 14. No, it's not. On page 12 of 14, the debt limit. So this was set at 110 million. We are currently exploring some options to take on some very low interest debt from the government potentially, and that may mean that we have the ability to we may need to take on a bit more debt than the 110 maximum if we want to take on this grant funding and, I don't know, the new ERA grant, basically. If we want to work on some renewable projects, we may need to take on additional debt so that we can take advantage of some very cheap money. Those are the last of the changes that I made, so.
Any questions on the changes or discussion?
Do we need a vote?
Oh, we definitely need a vote. I'm just seeing if anyone makes the motion or if I'm gonna have to ask if.
I'll
yes.
make that motion to approve policy B3 as amended.
Great, is there a second?
I'll second.
Is there any discussion prior or questions prior to the vote?
No, thanks for doing this because.
It's been long, yeah.
That's.
Yeah, thank you, Emily.
Hold you accountable.
Thank you.
It holds us all accountable.
It holds us accountable and it gives us.
Their own feet to the fire.
It's a time, a chance.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? On to
Right.
policy B5. Go ahead.
B5. This one's pretty quick. I just added a few items to this one. We did not have in our financial policies that we would develop a work plan. And for budgeting purposes, we need to make sure that, and forecasting purposes, we need to make sure that we have a work plan that has been created. So in the policy, I wrote that it would be developed every 5 years and updated every 3 years. It's pretty standard, I think. And then the second section just basically says that the board is going to authorize expenditures for capital additions, either by approval of the capital projects budget or by approval of budget amendments. And that we will utilize our long-range financial plan in the process of preparing the annual budget. So it just kind of works together with item E there. And those are the only changes I've made to this policy.
What's the difference between develop and update?
Well, I think we forecast it out for 5 years, but then you need to, revisit that 5-year plan every 3 years and keep it rolling. Like you can't just revisit it every 5 years. Does that make sense?
For the work plan, so you might have a 5-year work plan, once every 5 years, do a work plan. And it's gonna outline all the capital projects that need to happen across the plant over that 5-year period. In the middle of that, you might have something that comes up. You could have a massive wildfire, right? You could have a substation transformer fail. You could have things that happen that change the prioritization and change projects that need to be included on that work plan. So that's why you'd have a 3-year mark for updating it if other things need to come on or off of it.
So within one 5-year work plan, you would update it once,
Yes.
at least at the 3-year mark.
Yes.
Gotcha.
But it could be updated.
Or it could be updated yearly. Yes, absolutely. So you don't want to just like do it in 5 years, every 5 years and just ignore it. You want to update it, make sure those projects are still the right projects to be focusing your efforts on.
But that 3 years starts over every 5 years, right?
I know.
So you're not,
I could've just
update
said-
isn't, you don't update and develop on the same year, which would happen every, I'm bad at math, every 15 years? Right? You just update, yeah, okay.
Does anyone else have any questions? Is there more?
Do we want to say the work plan will be developed at least every 5 years?
Yeah,
That might help.
So do we need an amendment to this?
I don't know. And maybe it doesn't matter. Maybe we're getting too.
I'm fine with it. I just wanted to make sure I understood. Yeah, I think it's fine.
To me, the intent is clear.
Agreed.
It says at a minimum.
We all
So
understand.
you can develop it
That's
whenever
true,
you
yeah.
want. So
Never
it
mind.
says at a minimum.
Okay.
Every week.
Got to read the
Who
whole
wants to
sentence.
make a
I'll make a
motion?
motion to approve B5 as presented.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. 2024 rate increase. Do we want to do this before lunch?
Lunch is set up. So that is, this is going to be the most
What do you want?
brief meeting ever. Sorry, but lunch is set up if you guys want to. I think we do also need to keep in mind that we have a guest presentation at 1 o'clock and one at 1:30. So
How do
Seems like
people
this is
feel?
going to take a little while.
Should we eat our lunch while we're discussing? No, I'm fine with whatever you guys want to do.
I think we could roll in.
yeah.
Let's get rolling here. Is that what you said? Okay,
Hurry while we're doing.
Let's go.
Mike's gonna miss half.
yeah, let's go.
We have to have time for me to get my
Yeah,
childcare
well, we might
presentation.
move you.
No lunch until you get through this.
Yeah, let's go on to the regular.
Everyone would get through this, what is incentive.
I want to make sure everyone's refreshed. Slides. Sorry.
would you like to go up to the table?
Yeah, why don't you? Oh, come on.
Well, maybe that's it. Unless it's awkward for you guys for me back here.
It might be better if you're on the table. I'm sorry, I know you don't want to, but that way everybody can see you.
Yeah, I might have to move you.
It's hard when you're looking at your back. It's the same.
Is the depreciation schedule get reviewed by our auditors already? Or no?
I think not the schedule.
Yes, but not really how we're choosing to appreciate that.
You might get grouchy yourself. Feed me around, get grouchy.
I think Marge said it was about to be grouchy. That's okay.
All right. So, as you all know, we have an announcement from Tri-State. Well, maybe, I'm sorry, I keep saying that, but we have new board members here. You guys may not know. Tri-State has announced a rate increase that will be effective January of 2024. Based on other publications that have come out, we think this increase will be around 9%. So based on that estimate, our expenses will increase by roughly $2.2 million for power supply. In addition to that, we haven't had a rate increase since 2016. However, between 2016 and 2022, our operating costs not related to power have increased by 1.8 million annually. We really saw a significant portion of that increase happen between 2020 and 2022. I'm sure you all can guess why. Inflation has been a bear, and we don't, I expect the 2023 numbers will show another increase to this chart once we have those. So, I mean, that increase just between 2020 and 2021 was 7.5%. It's pretty significant. So our recommendation would be that we increase our total revenues by 9%. We would take 30% of that increase from the service availability charge and 70% of that increase from kilowatt hour and demand charges. So what this would look like is an additional 3.79 billion in revenues. And if you go to the next slide, we'll just talk, I put a few examples on here of the different rate groups, but if we just focus on residential, what that would look like for your average residential member in a January bill, so our colder months where they're using more energy, they would have an increase in the service availability charge to $33.22. And their total bill increase would be roughly $13.73.
Based on average usage.
Based on average usage. So the kilowatt hour charge, sorry, I didn't say this, is currently 10.9 cents, and it would go up to about 11.74 cents.
Is that 9%?
It's 9% revenue increase across the board. It's not 9% in each category because we're getting a certain 30% of that rate increase is coming from that base charge or access charge and service availability, sorry. And then 70% of it is coming from the energy.
Depending on the month.
Depending on the month, it'd be, it's more or less for me.
How did you come up with it, coming from service availability versus any rationale? I'm sure there's rationale, but what percent?
Yeah, I would say, right. So if you think about the impact that power supply has on our cost, it being between 60 and 70% of our total cost and the rest of it being operating costs, I think it's fair to break it up about that way.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
I'm just curious why, how you're doing it.
Right, and that's
Makes sense now.
That's my logic behind that. You need to kind of divide that increase up between your different revenue classes, and I think that makes sense to do it that way based on power supply cost.
Okay. So the next slide just sort of shows our total increase in cost since 2016. So with this rate increase to our power costs and the increase in operational costs, we're looking about a $4 million annual expense deficit or increase that we have not recovered in rates since we haven't done a rate increase. So with this increase, we would just about cover that full $4 million. Be a little bit short, but not a concerning amount. So, some key considerations to keep in mind is that there is no rate structure change with this increase, meaning that we would be passing along the increase to all of the rate classes just as is. We wouldn't be saying this rate class needs to pick up this much of the increase. That's what a cost of service study would do. And We are having a cost of service study right now. It is not expected to be complete in time for us to sort of get the communication out to the members in a timely way. Which is why we're not waiting for the cost of service study. Future rate design will be necessary. And I guess silver lining sort of is that we have already communicated that an increase is coming to the membership. So this shouldn't come as a shocking surprise to them.
It was communicated to them in December of last year and also again in February of this year. In February, we told the membership that we anticipated having to do the rate increase mid-year 23 or early 24. So it is in line with what we anticipated based on what we knew Tri-State was planning on doing with rates. So it is in line with what we have told our members over this year. I do want to make a few comments about the cost of service study and rate structure. We are in the middle of a cost of service study. We are also in the middle of a power supply transition. There could be significant need to change rate structures, to change, make more significant changes to our rates in coming years. I don't think this is the right time to do that. I'd like to see us get through the power supply transition. I'd like to see us get through the cost of service study, and then the board, really look at rate philosophy, rate design philosophy, and all of those things. Right now, the reason this is not linked to it is because we just know this is the increase we have coming. This is what our operational increase has been over the past 7 years. We know we need something in order to be whole. So that's why we're doing this straight across the board without making any changes to the rate structure itself.
I like the fact mirroring tri-states, even though our internal costs are going up. I feel like that's a positive turns to.
It's a good explanation.
Yeah, I mean, it's basically business, but it's positive.
Yeah.
So in logic, it's 9% pass through tri-state here, but we haven't increased our revenue at all. We have
because tri-state's like half of our expenses, right? Or half of our revenue, so.
So the preliminary call to order the other day had the two scenarios, and since for today, we've refined that to one recommendation. I'm just curious, if tri-state is 9% and this proposal is 9%, and we have a small shortfall, and we know our costs are going to increase, what about just the numbers if you plugged in something 9.1, 9.2? Does it really?
9.6, yeah.
Yeah, so 9.5, something that gives us a little wiggle room.
I would say that, yes, we could do 9.6 and cover the entire shortfall as we're seeing here, but that's based on past history. We don't exactly know what the shortfall will be in 2024, right? We haven't seen 2023's full numbers. We don't know what 2024's numbers could be. So even if we were to increase it to the exact amount to make it to where there's zero shortfall, we still could have a shortfall based on increasing costs, right? I mean, so I'm not against doing that if you guys want to take a slightly higher rate increase to feel like you're covering that full gap, but we don't know yet exactly what the impact will be.
And then we're using 2022 as a base year also. So 2023 could look different. It's.
And the other thing that's different for us in 2024 is that while we aren't changing our rate structures, Tri-State has changed theirs. And so we can try to model it on 2022. We know what it looks like if you apply it to 2022, but the weather could be different, the ski patterns could be different, so we could come out on the good, we could come out on the bad.
Yep.
So this is kind of, to me, it's kind of like the middle.
It is.
They predict a cold winter, so maybe we'll be good.
It's cold on a Friday.
If you thought about it at 9 versus a 9.5, is that from what we don't know, is that kind of nitpicking that little bit, or would it give us a little cushion for the future?
Well, I think that I don't want to speak out of turn, but we may be needing rate increases in subsequent year. I mean, we will, right? So that $200,000 shortfall is not significant enough that I feel like we need to nitpick it. It's easier to just say we need a 9% revenue increase.
Yeah, it just matches Tri-State.
It matches Tri-State. I think it's more fair right now. I'd rather get a cost of service study back and do a full examination of rates before we go above and beyond that.
Right. And understand what our power supply is going to look pay a
Right.
little bit
Absolutely.
before, you know, I don't want to, yeah.
Thank you.
This would be staff recommendation, is this amount?
The service availability charge, I mean, is there any advantage before we have exact numbers?
Yeah.
$50, 100, 200, 29.
What does the 9% turn it into?
33.2.
Well, that's not 9%.
Not exactly 9% across.
Remember, we're doing
30%
a 9% increase to our revenue requirement, our
Oh, right.
needs for revenue. But because we're taking 30% of that and saying we need $1 million of that to come from service availability, and we need $2 million.
But what does it make that number be?
$33.22
Oh,
is what the new for residential.
Should we just round up to
We
like
can.
$35 or
We can say
something?
it's 33, or we can say it's 34, but then it's just, I don't know, I think it's fine to have it, have sense attached to it.
And then I like your.
Yeah.
That was the explanation.
So Emily, you kind of took out the peaks and valleys then, with the 70-30.
So, I mean, to the extent that we can.
Right. I mean, everyone's usage is different, you know, and it's, the only way to perfectly do this would be to apply the increase on each individual member's bill.
Right.
And then they would have to use their energy exactly the same way that they were when we modeled it. So it, you know, it's, you have one fixed component and one variable component. So it makes it a little tricky to say exactly what each member is going to experience as far as what their increase will be. But this is our, you know, on average, our average consumer's use is what we would expect it to look like.
And remind me again, it was the 70% was on power and 30% on.
Service
60%
availability.
on service availability. So that's the fixed piece, and then 70% on energy and or demand. You know, the commercials, it'll be a mix between energy and demand, and on the residentials, it's all energy.
So you did do that.
So that like on these big power users, that service availability is kind of like nothing, right? I mean, it's not even.
And that $200 is not really, I mean, we
Always the
have
same.
some large power that are paying like $700 or $800.
Oh,
So it varies. This was just trying to give
Okay.
a very like high level look at what the bill impact might be for these different groups, but
And
each of those.
So the cost of service will look at like truly what is our cost to serve that customer.
And that's, well, each class, not each customer, but that's where looking at those service availability charges and all the different classes, I would, before we make significant changes to any of
Yeah.
this, I'd much rather have the cost of
Yeah.
service study rather than doing that here. That's why I like the 70-30 split. I think that's the most equitable way, and it just makes the most sense with the costs that we're facing to do it that way for right now.
Is my math wrong? But say for commercial, the large ones, current SA is 100, and with the increase is 115. So that's 15%.
Well, if you're taking-
Am I doing it wrong?
That's where it gets it. You're doing it
It's like
right.
an average.
It's 30% of the total 9%. 30% of that will come from service availability, and the 70% will come from the other.
And however that math works out.
Yes.
So it's not a
Exactly. And it's-
9% increase to rates.
It's
a
to revenue.
9% increase to revenue.
So you got to think about the revenue that comes from each of those,
Right.
yes.
Thank you.
And
I know it's confusing.
And logically, you know, a 15% increase, we haven't had one in
7 years.
but it's not a 15% increase. It's,
Right.
I mean, if you take the average bill,
It's not a 15% increase to their entire bill. It's a
No.
15% increase to one component
Yes.
and then a lesser increase to the next component.
yes.
And I will say that I think that most members will experience for total bill somewhere between like 7 and that 9%.
But again,
You know, it will
completely
vary.
depends on how their usage.
Yes.
So this slide, would that confuse the membership?
This is not a slide that we'd be giving out to the membership. We have talking points already drafted up that would be given to employees and board members to talk to members. And we also have a press release drafted that has this in a simpler format, that it's very straightforward to the members to tell them what the average residential impact would be. So we already have those drafted in case the board were to take action today. And then we have several months to communicate about it, which is what I'd like. If it's going into effect in January, I want to be able to talk to the members, make sure they all understand it, have meetings with our large commercials and things like that. Give them time for budgeting purposes for 2024. So we definitely will make sure that we don't put out information that's confusing to the extent that we can. I mean, it's a hard topic, so sometimes it can be confusing.
Does this mix work out if we're paying Tri-State 9% more for our demands, our power?
So that was the point that Liz made earlier. We won't know until we get through a year under their new rate structure, right? We won't really know, and it'll be weather dependent, it'll be our load dependent, and we'll see what that, really calculates out to be. But that's where you don't want to do too much. I don't think we want to get too in depth into creating a rate structure and rate changes around Tri-State's newly filed rate. I think we should wait until we, have a different power supplier, since we've already given our notice to withdraw, and then base a rate structure around it.
Any other questions? Anyone?
Hopefully internally, you continue to look for cost savings in that 30% that we do control.
That's something that we did notice or mention in the press release that we have drafted, is some of the cost containment measures that Mountain Parks has done over the past 7 years. Our staffing levels are significantly lower than they were that many years ago, specifically to save on operational costs, and we will continue to do that. I think it's critical that the piece that we can control, we do what we can to make it.
Should probably wait 7 years.
7 years is a hard amount of time to wait, because it does create a larger increase rather than a lot of smaller ones.
Right,
For
people
sure.
can stomach little small.
2% is a lot easier.
Yeah.
All right, well.
I'd rather
Let's just wait.
All the pain, those are 7 years.
I think, like you mentioned, the inflationary pressure is huge.
Yeah.
It really impacted this scenario.
Certainly,
I
when you
mean,
look
if we
from
would have done
2020
this,
to-
in 2019, we would have painted a little different picture, but 2020 to 2022 really.
And still now, it
Yeah,
is
and
still,
still
costs are
increasing.
continuing to rise on a lot of
Didn't
things.
inflation go up like 16% in the last 2 years, right? So,
We're seeing it for sure.
yeah.
Should be like, oh, sorry.
Hi.
If there are no further questions, Madam Chair, I would move the 2024 rate increase.
Thank you, Ty.
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? Lunchtime.
Change to the pumps, that's what I was gonna do.
So with us going to lunch, are you guys okay with either working through lunch or coming back? And because we have
Can
a
you
presentation in 30 minutes.
Can you give your preschool presentation during lunch?
Yeah.
You guys
Is it
okay with that?
okay if it's not on YouTube for you guys? Are you okay with that? Okay, let's do that.
I'm fine.
Let's go get lunch, and then Mike can lead a discussion about what.
I don't know. Are we bringing lunch back in here? Or are we going to eat lunch in there and let them do their
I
portion?
think we'll eat lunch